The freezing dawn air heavily blankets the desolate African savanna. The cracked earth radiates a bitter, biting cold that penetrates deep into the dry soil. Deep inside a crumbling, abandoned termite mound, a pack of dwarf mongooses remains tightly curled together. They are fiercely conserving their precious body heat in the suffocating darkness. But their desperate, silent rest is violently interrupted. A massive yellow-billed hornbill lands heavily in the dry dust right outside their narrow burrow. The giant bird aggressively kicks abrasive dirt directly into the dark entrance. It violently scratches the baked earth with its thick claws, sending a heavy shower of sand onto the sleeping mammals. The hornbill is fiercely hungry, but it absolutely refuses to hunt the thick brush alone. It aggressively pesters the dark hole, violently tossing heavy stones and twigs. It relentlessly annoys the pack until the grumbling, sleepy mongooses are forcefully evicted into the harsh morning light. The tiny mammals heavily drag their stocky bodies into the rising sun. They slowly groom their coarse, dust-covered fur, desperately absorbing the thermal heat. But before this highly lethal hunting party moves, they must violently assert their dominance over the wasteland. One by one, the tiny predators perform a bizarre, highly aggressive handstand. They forcefully rub their heavily scented anal glands as high up on the rough bark as physically possible. This deceptive chemical warfare tricks passing leopards into believing a massive, towering predator rules this territory. These small creatures are fiercely armed with a highly toxic, natural resistance. They actively hunt lethal desert scorpions, violently crushing the venomous stingers with their powerful jaws. The hungry hunting party finally marches into the thick, thorny scrub. The hornbill heavily stalks right beside them, marching like a giant, feathered shadow. As the mongooses violently dig into the hardened earth, they create pure, unadulterated chaos. They aggressively rip through dry grass roots and violently tear apart rotting acacia logs. Terrified dung beetles, highly toxic centipedes, and fast skinks frantically flee from the sharp, digging claws. The hornbill aggressively capitalizes on this massive, violent panic. Its giant, razor-sharp beak violently snaps up the escaping insects in mid-air. The bird actively uses the tiny mammals as a brutal, highly efficient biological bulldozer. The mongooses completely ignore the massive bird stealing their escaping leftovers. They gladly tolerate this giant, feathered thief because the bird offers a heavily armored aerial defense system. The hornbill possesses massive, incredibly sharp eyes that constantly scan the blinding blue sky. Suddenly, the hornbill frantically flaps its massive wings and releases a terrifying, high-pitched screech. A massive martial eagle is silently diving from the blinding sun, its razor-sharp talons fully extended for a lethal strike. The mongooses instantly understand the violent, echoing warning. They violently scramble deep into the jagged, rocky crevices, narrowly escaping a brutal, crushing death by a fraction of a second. The hornbill aggressively continues to sound the deafening alarm until the giant eagle heavily flies away in frustration. A soft, low cluck from the bird finally signals the all-clear. The tiny hunters cautiously emerge from the dark dirt, their lives completely saved by their feathered sentinel. But the savanna offers even more bizarre, highly calculated alliances. The hornbill suddenly releases a totally different rhythmic call across the dry grass. A massive, heavily scarred warthog slowly stomps into the dusty clearing. Most small mammals would immediately scatter from the crushing hooves of this 200-pound beast. The lead mongoose aggressively holds his ground. This towering giant is not a lethal predator, but a walking, breathing buffet of parasites. The warthog's thick, rubbery skin is deeply cracked and heavily infested with giant, blood-swollen ticks. The massive pig heavily collapses onto the dusty earth, letting out a deep, exhausted groan. The mongooses aggressively swarm the giant, resting beast. They fearlessly climb onto its broad, mud-caked back and thick, hairy neck. They aggressively target the deeply embedded, engorged parasites hiding inside the deep skin folds. With sharp, incredibly precise bites, they violently tear the swollen ticks right out of the tough, leathery hide. Two different species cleaning at the same time. The warthog completely surrenders to the sharp, aggressive pinches, tightly closing its dark eyes in pure, physical relief. The mongooses violently strip away the painful, toxic burden, rapidly filling their empty stomachs with rich, stolen blood. The deep, throbbing pain completely vanishes from the giant pig's scarred hide. It heavily shakes the dry, abrasive dust from its coarse hair and slowly wanders back into the thick, thorny brush. The hornbill silently returns to its high branch, its belly completely full of stolen insects. The mongoose pack heavily rests in the warm, baked sand, totally exhausted but thoroughly fed. In this brutal, unforgiving wasteland, pure, selfless kindness absolutely does not exist. Every single alliance is heavily built on ruthless, calculated survival. For the heavily armored warthog, this tiny, aggressive army is a desperate medical necessity against lethal bloodsuckers. For the giant hornbill, the violent, chaotic digging is an effortless, moving feast. And for the tiny mongooses, the giant bird is an ultimate, life-saving radar against the sky. Nature relentlessly dictates that brute strength is rarely enough to conquer the dust. In the deadly African savanna, the creatures that truly master the wasteland are the ones that violently learn to survive together.